He grew up in a house so small, 4 children shared one room on an island most people cannot find on a map. His father was a gardener who drank too much. His mother cleaned other people's kitchens to keep the lights on. At 15, a surgeon opened his chest to fix a heart that wouldn't stop racing, and then he became the most decorated goal scorer in the history of the sport. Not despite those things, because of them. This is not a story about talent. Talent is everywhere. This is a story about what happens when talent collides with something much rarer and much more dangerous. Here is exactly how it works. He grew up in a house so small, 4 children shared one room on an island most people cannot find on a map. His father was a gardener who drank too much. His mother cleaned other people's kitchens to keep the lights on. At 15, a surgeon opened his chest to fix a heart that wouldn't stop racing. And then he became the most decorated goal scorer in the history of the sport. Not despite those things, because of them. This is not a story about talent. Talent is everywhere. This is a story about what happens when talent collides with something much rarer and much more dangerous. Here is exactly how it works. Madeira is a small Portuguese island in the Atlantic Ocean. Think of it as a beautiful, rocky place roughly the size of a city, surrounded by water on every side, thousands of kilometers from the rest of Europe. On the 5th of February 1985, Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro was born there. That name alone tells you something. In Portugal, you carry both your mother's and your father's surnames. His father's name was Diniz Aveiro. His mother's name was Dolores dos Santos. His first name, Cristiano, was ordinary enough. But the name Ronaldo, that was added in honor of his father's favorite actor, Ronald Reagan. Yes, one of the most famous footballers in human history is named after the 40th President of the United States. You can do with that information whatever you like. The family had almost nothing. His father worked as a gardener and as a kit man. That is a person who washes and organizes the football kits, the uniforms at a tiny local club called Andorinha. His mother worked double shifts cleaning and cooking for other people. There were 4 children, one small house. But here is what you need to understand about that house. Football was everywhere in it. His father loved the game. His brothers played. The streets of the neighborhood were the pitch, the field. No proper boots, no proper ball sometimes. Just kids, concrete, and the desire to be somewhere else entirely. Ronaldo was one of those kids, and he was immediately, obviously different. His neighbors had a nickname for him even then. They called him O Abelhinha, the little bee, because he never ever stopped moving. They also called him something else, Crybaby. Not as an insult, well, maybe a little as an insult, but because he hated losing so badly that he would cry on the pitch when his team fell behind. He has openly admitted this. I was always very hot-headed, he said in an interview. I hated losing and I cried. That detail is not a flaw in the story. That detail is the story. Keep that in mind. At age 12, scouts from Sporting CP noticed him. Sporting CP stands for Clube de Portugal, is one of the 3 biggest football clubs in Portugal. They have a famous youth academy, a training system for developing young players in the capital city of Lisbon. Lisbon is not Madeira. Lisbon is the mainland. It is hundreds of kilometers away, across the sea. Ronaldo was 12 years old. His family had no money to travel with him, no ability to be nearby. The decision was simple and brutal. Go alone or stay. He went. Now here is the part people skip over when they tell this story. It was not romantic. It was not empowering. It was, by all accounts, genuinely awful. He arrived in Lisbon and was immediately mocked. His Madeiran accent, the way people from the island speak, was different enough that his new teammates teased him for it. He was homesick in a way that physically hurt. He cried himself to sleep, multiple nights. A 12-year-old boy in a strange city with no family, being laughed at by the very people he was trying to impress. Most children would have taken the next boat home. There would be no shame in that. He was 12. Ronaldo stayed. And then he did something that defined every chapter that followed. He trained harder than anyone else, not a little harder, noticeably, uncomfortably, obsessively harder. He stayed on the training pitch after everyone else had gone in. He worked on the specific things he could not do yet. He treated every weakness like a personal enemy. That habit, born from loneliness and spite and a refusal to be humiliated, never left him. Not at 18, not at 25, not at 35. At 15, something terrifying happened. Ronaldo was diagnosed with a heart condition called tachycardia. That word means his heart would race uncontrollably, not just during exercise, but while resting. While sitting still, his heart simply would not slow down. For a footballer, that is a career-ending diagnosis, potentially a life-threatening one. He had surgery. Surgeons used a laser to correct the source of the problem, essentially rewiring the electrical pathways of his heart. He was in the operating room in the morning. He was out by afternoon. Days later, he was back in training. His mother later recalled that the surgery may have actually allowed him to run even faster. Whether that is medically verified or simply a mother's pride, we'll leave that one to the cardiologists. The point is this: at 15, Cristiano Ronaldo looked directly at the possibility that football was over for him, and he didn't flinch. By 2002, Ronaldo was 17 and playing for Sporting CP's first team. That is already remarkable. Most players his age are still in youth academies. In the summer of 2003, Sporting CP played a pre-season friendly, a practice match that doesn't officially count, against one of the most famous football clubs in the world, Manchester United. At this point, Manchester United were the dominant force in English football. Their manager was a Scotsman named Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the most decorated coaches in the sport's history. His squad contained experienced, world-class professionals. Ronaldo, 18 years old, played against them, and he destroyed them. Now, destroyed is a loose word in football. He didn't score 4 goals and walk off laughing. What he did was something harder to define and more impressive in practice. He was unplayable. Experienced defenders, men who had played hundreds of professional matches, could not handle him. His speed, his footwork, his confidence, his sheer refusal to be intimidated by the occasion. By halftime, something unusual was happening on the Manchester United bench. The United players were asking their own manager to sign him. Players lobbying their manager to buy an opponent mid-friendly is not a normal occurrence in football. It essentially never happens. But multiple United players reportedly went to Ferguson and said, in various ways, "We cannot let this person leave this stadium unsigned." Ferguson agreed. Within weeks, Ronaldo became the most expensive teenager in the history of the Premier League, English football's top league. The fee was £12.24 million, which in 2003 was an extraordinary sum for an 18-year-old. He arrived at Manchester United with bleached tips in his hair, a flair for step-overs. That's a move where you fake to go one way with your foot before going the other. And an extremely complicated relationship with the concept of losing. Nothing about that would change. Here is something important to understand about Cristiano Ronaldo when he arrived at Manchester United. He was exciting, he was skillful, he had extraordinary physical gifts, pace, balance, coordination. He was also a little selfish, struggled to make the right pass at the right time, and tried tricks in situations where a simpler decision would have been better. In other words, he was a teenager. Sir Alex Ferguson did something that would define the rest of Ronaldo's career. He gave him the number 7 shirt. At Manchester United, the number 7 is not just a number. It was worn by George Best, considered one of the most naturally gifted players of all time. Then Brian Robson, then Eric Cantona, a French forward who was part philosopher, part footballer, then David Beckham, who became one of the most famous athletes on the planet. Number 7 at Manchester United carries the weight of expectation so heavy that most players would collapse under it. Ferguson handed it to an 18-year-old from Madeira who still cried when he lost. He knew exactly what he was doing. Over the next 6 years, Ronaldo did not just become a better footballer. He rebuilt himself. He worked on his weaker foot. He studied how defenders positioned themselves and found the angles they left open. He developed a free kick technique that baffled goalkeepers, the knuckleball. A knuckleball free kick is one where the ball is struck with almost no spin, causing it to move unpredictably through the air, dipping and swerving in directions the goalkeeper cannot anticipate. Physics becomes your assistant. He also built his body into something that belonged more in an athletic science textbook than on a football pitch. At peak fitness, his body fat percentage was reportedly in the single digits. That means almost no fat on his body at all. Not because of vanity, though he is famously not unaware of his own appearance. Because he had decided that the physical version of himself could always be better. Every single year. In the 2007-08 season, Ronaldo was 23 years old. He scored 42 goals in 49 appearances, in all competitions. For one club, in 1 year. Let that number settle for a moment. 42 goals. Professional footballers who score 15 in a season are considered excellent. 20 is elite. 42 is a different category of human activity. Manchester United won the Premier League, England's top division, and the UEFA Champions League, which is the tournament where the best clubs from every European country compete against each other. The Champions League is, effectively, the biggest club football competition in the world. Ronaldo won his first Ballon d'Or that year. The Ballon d'Or, which is French for Golden Ball, is the award given annually to the best footballer on the planet. A panel of journalists and national team coaches vote for it. Winning 1 is a career achievement. Winning 5 is an argument. He would eventually win 5. In 2009, Ronaldo made a move he had apparently dreamed about since childhood. He joined Real Madrid. Real Madrid are the most successful club in the history of the Champions League. They play in the Spanish top division called La Liga. Their home ground, the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid, holds over 80,000 people. Their history includes some of the greatest players who ever lived. The transfer fee was £80 million. At that time, the most expensive transfer in football history. A transfer fee, by the way, is the amount one club pays another club to acquire a player's contract. When you see those enormous numbers associated with player moves, that money goes to the selling club, not the player. The player negotiates their own salary separately. It is two entirely different financial conversations happening simultaneously. Football economics is its own subject. At Real Madrid, something happened that nobody fully predicted. He got better. In 9 seasons at Real Madrid, Ronaldo scored 450 goals in 438 appearances. More goals than appearances. That is a ratio that should not be physically possible for a forward in professional football, a sport where scoring once per game is considered extraordinary. He became Real Madrid's all-time top scorer, overtaking the record set by the legendary Raúl, a player who had spent 16 years at the club. He won 4 Champions League titles in 5 years during one of the most dominant periods any club has ever produced in European football. He won the Ballon d'Or 4 more times for a total of 5. He scored in El Clásico, the name given to matches between Real Madrid and their rivals Barcelona, one of the most watched sporting events in the world, so regularly that it stopped being surprising and started being simply expected. He became, statistically, the greatest scorer in the history of European club competition. And then he left. Here is what casual observers almost universally get wrong about Ronaldo. They think the story is about goals. It is not about goals. Goals are the output. The story is about the input. There is an almost mythological reputation among teammates, managers, and opponents across every club Ronaldo has played for, Sporting, Manchester United, Real Madrid, Juventus, Portugal, around one consistent observation. He is always the last to leave training. Not sometimes, not usually, always. In a sport populated by professional athletes whose entire livelihood depends on physical fitness, people who are, by definition, more dedicated to their sport than almost anyone on earth, Ronaldo is still the outlier. Teammates 20 years younger report that they cannot match his commitment to additional work. Former colleagues speak about it with something close to disbelief. The boy who trained alone in Lisbon because he was lonely and homesick at 12 turned that loneliness into a permanent operating system. He simply never found a reason to stop. There is another detail that gets overlooked. When Ronaldo was younger, he was predominantly right-footed. His left foot was weaker. In football, a player who can only use one foot effectively is easier to defend against. You simply force them onto their weaker side. By his peak at Real Madrid, his left foot was statistically nearly as effective as his right. Not naturally. Through years of deliberate, targeted, repetitive practice. He chose a weakness, decided it was unacceptable, and eliminated it. This is not a typical approach. Most professional players accept their natural limitations and play around them. Ronaldo decided his limitations were a scheduling problem. For most of his career, Ronaldo had one conspicuous absence from his trophy cabinet. An international trophy with Portugal. Portugal, the national team, had never won a major international tournament in Ronaldo's lifetime. At every major tournament, something went wrong. A defeat at a crucial moment, an injury, a brilliant individual performance that led nowhere collectively. In Euro 2016, the European Championship, a tournament held every 4 years between European national teams, Portugal reached the final against France. 25 minutes into the match, Ronaldo was injured. A collision with a French player tore ligaments in his knee. Ligaments are the connective tissue that holds your joints together. Tearing them is agonizing, and more importantly, it means you cannot continue. Ronaldo was forced off the pitch in tears, not for the first time in his career, but for the most meaningful time. What happened next is one of the most remarkable moments in recent football history. He did not go down the tunnel. He did not remove his boots and disappear into the dressing room. He sat on the bench and then he stood on the touchline, the sideline, and he coached his teammates. He spoke to them during stoppages. He pointed, he gestured, he refused to leave. Portugal won 1-0, their first major international tournament ever. Afterwards, his teammate Cedric Soares said that Ronaldo had told them before the match, "Listen people, I'm sure we will win this Euro, so stay together and fight for it." The man who cried when his childhood team conceded a goal in the streets of Madeira finally cried on the biggest stage in the sport, this time because they had won. In 2018, Ronaldo made another move that shocked the football world. He left Real Madrid for Juventus, the dominant club in Italian football, based in Turin. The fee was €100 million, making it the most expensive transfer in Italian football history at the time. He was 33 years old. In sport, 33 is when conversations about retirement begin. In football especially, where the physical demands are enormous, the average career ends somewhere in the early to mid-30s. Players at 33 are expected to be declining, managing their minutes, playing less, beginning the long goodbye. Ronaldo went to Juventus and immediately scored 28 goals in his first season. He helped them win the Italian league, called Serie A, twice. He won the Italian Cup. He stayed 3 years, scored over 100 goals for the club, and then in 2021 made a highly publicized and emotionally complicated return to Manchester United. That chapter did not end as well as it began. His second spell at United was turbulent, and his contract was terminated at the end of 2022 under difficult circumstances. This is the diplomatic version of events. In January 2023, at the age of 37, Ronaldo made the move that surprised even seasoned football observers. He joined Al Nassr, a club in Saudi Arabia. This is not a historically famous football destination. At the time, Saudi Arabian football was not considered top tier. Moving there was seen by many as the beginning of retirement, a lucrative final act before the curtain came down. It was, reportedly, the highest salary ever paid to any footballer in history. The specific figure has never been officially confirmed, but estimates run into the hundreds of millions of dollars annually when you include commercial agreements. Ronaldo has said the 2026 World Cup, happening right now as you watch this, will definitely be his last. He is 41 years old. He is still playing. He is still scoring. Here is why the Ronaldo story matters beyond the biography. His move to Saudi Arabia in 2023 did something few individual decisions in football history have done. It changed the market. Within 2 years, dozens of elite players followed. Karim Benzema, N'Golo Kante, Sadio Mane, players who would have finished their careers in European football quietly instead moved to Saudi Arabia for extraordinary contracts. The Saudi Pro League, the top division in Saudi football, became a genuine destination for players at the top of the game, not just a retirement home. One player's decision reshaped global football economics. That is not a common outcome of one contract signing. There is also the World Cup dimension. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is the biggest football tournament on the planet, held every 4 years. Portugal, with Ronaldo still as a central figure, is participating. Ronaldo has said it will be his final World Cup. For context, Ronaldo has played in 5 World Cups. He scored his first World Cup goal in 2006. He has never won the tournament. That is the one major trophy still absent from his career. He has made clear, in various interviews, that this fact sits with him. At 41, on the largest stage in the sport, in what is almost certainly his final tournament, Cristiano Ronaldo is still trying to win the thing he has never won. That is either poetic or absurd, possibly both, and it is completely, utterly consistent with everything he has ever been. Here is a topic that will start a fight in almost any football conversation. Is Cristiano Ronaldo the greatest player of all time? There is an argument, a long, deeply felt, statistically supported argument, that the answer is no. That another player, an Argentine named Lionel Messi, holds that title. The Ronaldo versus Messi debate is the longest-running argument in modern football. Entire YouTube channels exist dedicated to it. Relationships have been strained by it. It is in many ways the defining sporting debate of the early 21st century. We are not going to resolve it here. Partly because it cannot be resolved. Partly because it would require its own video entirely. Partly because choosing a side would reduce this channel's comment section to a document that would make historians weep. What we will say is this. The fact that the debate exists, that it has been alive and unresolved for 15 years, is itself a statement about what Ronaldo achieved. You need 2 extraordinary things to have a genuine competition. The debate is proof of the level he reached and sustained for longer than almost anyone thought possible. Cristiano Ronaldo was born in poverty on a small Portuguese island, left home alone at 12, survived heart surgery at 15, performed so brilliantly in a friendly match that a legendary manager refused to leave without signing him, transformed himself from an exciting but flawed teenager into the most prolific goal scorer in the history of club football in Europe, won the Champions League 5 times across 2 clubs, won the Ballon d'Or 5 times, won a European Championship with Portugal in 2016, despite being carried off injured, rebuilt the market for Saudi Arabian football with a single transfer, and at 41 years old is still playing, still scoring, still refusing to accept that his story has reached its final chapter. The thing most people miss is not the goals or the trophies or the records. It is the source. A 12-year-old crying himself to sleep in a city that mocked his accent. A 15-year-old getting his chest opened on an operating table. A kid nicknamed Crybaby who decided somewhere along the way that the only acceptable response to the world doubting you was to outwork everyone in it. He did not arrive at greatness. He built it. Piece by piece, year by year, repetition by repetition, and the construction never stopped. The game has not changed. You have. You're welcome. Subscribe if you enjoyed this type of content. It means a lot.